do have our a few moments in the beginning where we have to wait for the live stream.
Like it's on.
487. Let's just see how that's going. Record here on this computer as well. Okay. Okay, very good. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Saturday, May 2nd, 2020. This is GoldFish Report number 487. It might be one of the most important GoldFish reports we've ever done. This is about the U.S. Judiciary, aka the broken branch. We have some very disturbing news to report tonight, and we do hope it gets the attention of everybody who is in the position to be responsible for oversight and accountability, not only within the judicial system, but within our court, within our prison system as well. And we're going to be highlighting some egregious, almost gulag conditions that are existing in some U.S. federal prisons. Joining me tonight is Dr. Scott Werner, who is a regular guest on the GoldFish Report. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, thanks for having me, Louisa.
Thanks for being here. And of course, we have Audrey Ewis joining us, who is also simulcasting this on Ascension Radio. Audrey, thanks for simulcasting this.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, and also we are waiting for Austin Steinbart to be joining us. As you know, Baby Q has been having some recent problems with the federal judicial system as well. I want to start this out by talking tonight about some problems that we're all having to face now within the judiciary. And yeah, I do have my, just want to make sure this headset is working properly, because what I have to share with you is going to be something I shared last night in the POTUS report, but I want to, in case you missed that, I want to bring attention to people about what's happened within this court case with General Flynn and how on earth this could possibly happen. So let me screen share this. We're going to screen share a couple of clips, and then Scott and I will start discussing it, and Audrey can jump in if you'd like to, because we're going to first talk about the judiciary and the broken branch, and then we're going to talk about the prison system, which is far more broken and egregious. And we have a big problem, and America has lost faith in our judiciary, and this is why.
Barack Obama is one of the most corrupt presidents in history, certainly in modern history. Barack Obama. It was the Obama FBI that was spying on the Trump campaign. It was the Obama FBI that was spying on Carter Page. It was the Obama FBI that went after Michael Flynn. It was the Obama FBI that hid exculpatory information about Michael Flynn. It was the Obama FBI that lied to the FISA court. It was the Obama FBI that conspired to trigger the 25th Amendment against the President of the United States. It was the Obama FBI that was leaking. And while you talk about your group there, and you and they deserve a lot of credit, I came on this network on March 5th as a former chief of staff to an attorney general, and I looked at the leaks, and I knew they were coming from the FBI that were taking place. And I took 8 of them, one exhibit after another, and I said, and I meant it, there's espionage going on in this administration against Trump, against his campaign. I didn't have the specifics, but I knew enough to read what was going on. Those leaks were coming from the FBI. And I want the American people to know that one of the problems is, in addition to the most corrupt president in modern history, Obama, we have the most corrupt press in modern history. You want to know why? There are dozens of former Democrats that worked on Capitol Hill, that worked in nonprofit groups, that worked in the Obama and Clinton administrations, who are now so-called news journalists in the media. And they have family members, too. There is an incestuous relationship. I call it the Democrat Party media because that's exactly what it is. And they're covering up for Biden now. When Biden wants to speak, he can barely speak. When Biden wants to speak, who does he talk to? Joe Scarborough? Oh, that'll be a fascinating discussion. Between the two of them, they have a negative IQ of 48. You're going to have Biden there. You know full well that the Scarborough staff and the Biden staff are already coordinating on how he's going to respond and so forth. Hey, tough guy Biden, you're always calling out the president. You're going to take him behind the schoolhouse. How about you stand up straight like a man in front of a camera, take questions for 30 or 40 minutes. The president does it for 90 minutes at a time. You were accused of sexual assault. In some states, what you're accused of doing is called rape. This is a very, very serious matter. So defend yourself like a man. Speak out. Don't put out statements.
Yeah. So
Barack Obama.
That was really compelling. I mean, Mark Levin is definitely a very prolific speaker, and he's extremely, he articulates himself very well. He does his research, as you could tell. And before we move on, I'm going to play one more clip because we have a crisis in our judiciary. And this is why.
It was worse than we thought. Remember what happened here, Steve? The FBI in 2016 spies on 2 American citizens associated. Someone is held accountable for these major wrongs that took place. Had already told the Justice Department associated with the Trump campaign. For one of those citizens, they go to the secret court, the FISA court. They take the now famous dossier. The dossier they knew was salacious and unverified. The dossier that they knew was not true. They used that as the basis to get the warrant to spy on one of these individuals. They don't tell the court that the dossier is Russian disinformation. They don't tell the court that it was paid for by the Clinton campaign. And they don't tell the court the guy who wrote it, Christopher Steele, had already told the Justice Department he was desperate to stop Trump. And now we learn they go after Mike Flynn and set him up just days into the new administration. What I want to know is, why didn't Bob Mueller tell us this? Remember, in May of 2017, when Bob Mueller's named special counsel, we were told this is the greatest guy who's ever come to Washington. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's the most honest guy since George Washington. Why didn't he tell us this? And maybe more importantly, where's Christopher Wray? Why didn't we learn any of this from him? Thank goodness for Sidney Powell and Bill Barr. We would have never got this information.
Okay, so we have a problem. We have a crisis here, Scott, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And it stems deep. I mean, the judiciary system actually passed Title 18 without any congressional input or Congress even being in session. Title 18 was all of a sudden passed. And as you know, Title 18 is all of the criminal law in the United States. And it wasn't even made by our Congress, who is supposed to make the law. And so we have a judicial system that made its own rules. When I got hit by our U.S. judicial system, they told me that I was guilty and there was no way I could defend myself. They had proof, they had facts, and they were lying out their teeth to me. Mm-hmm. And yet they do. They have a 98% conviction rate. And usually the first time they take you through, they have a 100% conviction rate. And you can only get reheard through running it back through the system. And, you know, it's amazing to me that the judicial system got so corrupted during, actually it started with George H. Bush and got carried through with Bill Clinton, because both of them were running with the ball, the same ball of the CIA. And that continued through George W., right through Obama. So for the last 30 years, we've been ran by a judicial system that is corrupt.
And you're absolutely right. And I want to welcome Austin Steinbart to the program as well, Baby Q. Welcome back, Austin. Nice to be with you.
Hey, Louisa, great to be here.
Yeah, I just played a clip by Jim Jordan talking about how Mike Flynn was set up, how, Mueller obviously didn't do anything because, as President Trump says, he's a dirty cop. This whole thing was, tonight's program we're calling the U.S. judiciary, the broken branch, but it's not just the judiciary, it's also the prison system. And you recently had, another encounter, unfortunately, and it was kind of ridiculous because it was for conditions that were impossible to meet. I know that you've done a debriefing on BBQ Plus, but could you just give us a little idea how you're doing right now, and what were the conditions like in this federal prison?
Oh, well, I'm doing a lot better now that I'm out. They're just pretty bad, I mean, everything's extremely dirty, and it's not that, I'm expecting much. It's just people get put into these trash-covered cells that are totally unsanitary, that have blood, that have crap kind of smeared everywhere. They get treated really horribly by the guards. They make it kind of impossible for you to sleep. So, like, they say the lights out at 11. They give you breakfast, come wake you up at 4:30. And the lights are you can't even turn the lights out in the cell. So there's really, like, the option is really bright or half bright. Mm-hmm. And so it just seems like, as someone who hasn't had much experience with that, it seems like a system that's set up to be as cruel as possible, but also to not rehabilitate anyone. And the saddest part was that most of the people in there, when you hear about what they did, they were in there for incredibly ticky-tacky things. So it was just a giant organized cruelty is what my best description of it.
As I was listening to organized cruelty, I have some other words we're going to use to describe, because I've got some reports from some people in other prisons as well. And I'm telling you, we're really talking about, American gulags at this point. At this point, it seems like you're not in there, merely to do time because, let's say you're convicted of something, and in your case, you're not even indicted on anything yet. But, you lose your rights because, as you said in your debriefing, you're innocent, you're guilty until proven innocent. That's one of the first problems that we have. Isn't that right, Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. And then with this coronavirus, they can just add on a whole nother level to that of not letting you outside, not letting you get any sunlight on your face. For me, I have celiac disease, so I have very specific food allergies. Both times I went in there, they weren't able to feed me for, days. The first time was 3 days. The second time I got fed lunch on the second day. But they just, they have been running that for so long, and they've never had to change for so long that it just kind of builds up. The rot just builds up and builds up and builds up and gets more and more and more corrupt. And nobody's really had the political will to do anything about it before. So, I mean, there's activists, but as a country as a whole, we've really never had the political will to end this yet. So I'm hoping that we can be generating that support and making some major changes happen.
Right. Scott, you were telling me earlier about what happened with the Bush. This is going to surprise a lot of people. Do you want to mind repeating what you told me earlier?
When I was in there in, I believe it was November of 2004, literally the president's wife had control over the commissary.
That's Barbara Bush.
Yeah, Barbara. No, not Barbara.
I'm sorry. What was her name? No, not Barbara Bush. It was
it's not
Laura. I'm sorry, Laura Bush.
Laura Bush was in
that.
charge of the commissary. And as you know, commissary is where you get money from your family or friends sent to the judicial system. They put it in your account, and you can actually buy things more than what they have there in the prison and get a little more nutrition. Well, in November 2014, all of a sudden the food just got really crappy. We went from getting some protein, some fruit, vegetables, to just getting carbohydrates. And literally I asked what was going on, and came to find out they had dropped the daily bill for feeding the prisoners from about $7 a day down to $1.52. And so the prison system was feeding you the cheapest, the worst, the freest food they could get. And a lot of it was rotted, believe it or not. We would get hot dogs that were green, meat that was smelled bad, like it'd been around way too long. And literally, I was giving away this protein to people because it tested as poisonous for me. And they would say, well, give it to me then, because they were all so hungry. And the system, I mean, this is the Fed system. You know, a lot of people think, oh, club fed, you know, they go and they play tennis, they can play basketball. You know, that was probably before Clinton where that was happening, because when I was there, it was nothing like that. It was literally dirty, scummy. If you didn't clean your own toilet, it didn't get cleaned. And a lot of the people in there would not clean like they needed to keep even the least of diseases away. It was horrible. And they wouldn't even give you cleaning supplies. So you had to do it literally with scrubbing with your own hands if you had to. And it was a mess. It was you know, people don't want to hear this stuff, but our prison system is a mess.
No, people have to hear this. I mean, that's what, you know, Austin, you were describing how they even roughed you up a little bit. I mean, when is, you know, when is, you know, being held, right, innocent until proven guilty, when does that justify using physical violence against someone who's being held and not even convicted of anything?
Yeah, they you know, they like to be rough with everybody. Just, I guess they feel like they got a reputation and they're like, oh, if we are nice to anyone, then, you know, we're setting the precedent that will be, you know, for dangerous people, they might take that the wrong way and come at us. But speaking of what was just said, yeah, there was a lot of rotten food in the prison there that I was there too. Like the first night when I was going in, I was saying like, hey, they're probably not going to feed me. They didn't feed me for 3 days last time. Is there anything you could do? And I got one of the intake people to feel bad and go to the kitchen and just try to find something for me. And they ended up going and grabbing 2 hard-boiled eggs and a thing of milk. And the thing of milk was totally stale. And the hard-boiled eggs were green and like half rotten. So it's exactly like what he was saying. The food is terrible. They give you, you know, not enough calories for an adult male to survive. And then they try to hawk you all this better food in the commissary. And so the way that ends up actually working out is all the people that are in there for ticky-tacky things, you know, most of the people in there are not wealthy people. They don't have jobs at the moment. They just got arrested. They're poor people, and they don't get enough food to survive. And so the dynamic that gets set up is people that are in there for the worst stuff, the cartel people. They get hundreds of dollars wired into their commissary on the first day, and they, you know, essentially eat like kings in there, and everybody else is pretty much starving. And for the sanitation and the sleep, they make all this hoopla that we got to prevent the spread of diseases, but then they don't clean anything. Everything's extremely dirty. They don't let anybody sleep a full night, and they don't give anybody adequate nutrition to survive. So it's just like, how are you possibly not supposed to get sick unless you just have a really good immune system in conditions like that? It just is set up to be as cruel as possible. And I think one of the prevalent attitudes that we're fighting on that is that a lot of people think, like in the back of their mind, of like, oh, you know, it's federal prison, it's not supposed to be fun. And it's like, well, but is it supposed to be humane? Right? Like, I get that, you know, people want murderers to suffer the consequences, but
right.
You know, the vast majority of people in there are not in there for things like murder. The vast majority of people in there are in there for ticky-tacky parole violations or things like what I'm there for. And it's just totally ridiculous that, you know, I would say at least 2/3 of the people in there do not deserve to be there at all. And it's just sad that they can, you know, perpetuate that system. They can treat you so bad. They don't, you know, even need to treat you like a human being. And so even for the people that do commit bad crimes, you'd think like pit bulls, and if that's bad, the worst thing I could do for it would be to lock it in a cage for a year and abuse it and like not feed it, not let it sleep, and just do all these awful things to it and treat it terribly. That's not, you know, it's never going to come out being better than when it went in. It's almost going to just turn it into even a worse monster. And one of the
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we were in there, some young kids, you know, there was a couple 18-year-olds in there that were there for incredibly ticky-tacky stuff. So it's like, what are we doing here? We're taking these kids and we're turning them from, they were reasonable kids trying to have jobs. One was trying to go to the Navy. One was worked in foundations. And we're essentially just turning them into hardcore criminals. We're hardening them into the people that we don't want in our society.
Yeah, so this is a problem. And you had said also that there was a potential problem about you being released because of COVID-19, and you were able to overcome that hurdle, which is why we're able to talk to you today. How bad is it, do you think, right now, this whole issue? Have you heard, is there like a quarantined areas or a cordoned area or something where people have tested positive? Is there testing going on? And did they do anything to protect you from the population that could possibly, I mean, I'm sure, you would be concerned about whether you were exposed to that due to some kind of perhaps, negligence, in fact. I mean, if you go in there as a healthy individual and you're not even guilty of anything, could you imagine contracting something there, especially right now with, you can't even walk down the street, parks, oh yay, parks reopened today. Wow, that's great news. But I mean, it's been so draconian. It's been, a lockdown, quite honestly. So we've all been imprisoned in our homes because of this. So what can you tell us about the condition of, do you know much about what's going on within that prison there regarding the COVID-19?
Yeah, so I happened to get lucky that there was an outbreak of, like, I guess one of the guards in one of the other buildings tested positive for that. So I wasn't personally exposed to that, but only because I'm lucky, right? And when you're in there, you're pretty much stuck. They pretty much don't clean things, and you're in very close proximity to all the other inmates. So they don't care about your safety at all, right? The guards will all wear masks, but they just make it like, if I was in the pod with the coronavirus person, I don't see how you could not contract that, right? Just because the conditions they put in there make it nearly impossible to not get sick if someone else was sick. Luckily, I was in a pod. We were quarantined, so like whoever the people that come in on the same day, is called your pod or your cohort, and so we just were kind of stuck inside and stuck in a little area with just those people. And I happened to get lucky and have none of them be sick with anything. But if one of them was sick with something, there's really nothing I could have done but get sick, right? It's just the conditions make it so that'd be impossible not to be the case.
It's amazing because it's amazing because people who are being admitted to nursing homes are being quarantined for 12 days before they're, mixed in with the general population of the nursing home. So you'd think that for the safety of people, especially people that may have an underlying condition, and, you weren't convicted of anything, you weren't indicted of anything. In fact, you're trying to be an advocate, and they're trying to accuse you of extortion. So, but it's not extortion when Antifa does it, right? When they the ladies with the pink hats, bully everybody on the streets and everything, and prevent people from, walking around, and the ones that walk naked around, to protest and make statements. But that's not illegal. I mean, isn't there such a double standard with that, Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm essentially being charged with is computer fraud and extortion. So they're saying I had these files that were some CIA files from WikiLeaks and some curations that were in this, it was called Amorph's Archive, but it was essentially like, if you've heard of Google Drive, similar sort of a service that I was paying for. Mm-hmm. And the company got threatened by the CIA. They just arbitrarily took it down. And so I told my followers to call and email that company and help me demand those files back. And so by the FBI's logic, the emails that my followers were sending them were fraudulent. They were not actually support-related emails. So they said that was computer fraud because the emails that we were sending were not legitimate emails. And they said I used that computer fraud to then extort that company for things of monetary value. But the only things I was saying that demanding back were, the files that I had spent a lot of time researching up and the service essentially that I had already paid for. So it's a totally preposterous case. And, I like my odds once we get to trial. But again, with this coronavirus thing, I haven't even been indicted. And they just got a 90-day extension they get 90 more days to indict me. So I just essentially have to be on house arrest. All of my devices were taken by the FBI, my phones, my computers, all my guns. and I'm physically banned from possessing a device that can even connect to the internet as part of this home incarceration is what they're calling it.
Okay.
And I can't drink alcohol. I can't do it. Can't leave. So it's just they essentially took away all my rights, and it's guilty until proven innocent sort of a deal, right? I'm already experiencing the punishment, and I have not had a chance to have my day in court whatsoever. So totally antithetical to the way the system is supposed to work. But it just underscores how corrupt our federal justice system is, and how they really don't care about our constitutional rights in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And they will railroad anyone for any reason.
Right.
And unless you can go through the whole process and end up defending yourself, they don't care. They're happy to take your rights away.
So do you feel like you're being singled out or being made an example of? Is that why you think they're doing this?
Oh, they're definitely trying to shut me up. And even like one of the FBI SWAT people raiding my house that day told my wife that I was mostly right about. So they don't believe me about the quantum stuff. They don't believe me about the time warping stuff. So they said pretty much everything else I was talking about was right, as far as like the FBI stand down orders and how they block and tackle for the CIA's drug dealing and gangbanging and human trafficking. But they admit that, right? Just candidly admit that right out in the fact. So it just shows you how many of them know exactly what's happening.
Right.
But either they're too afraid to speak out, or they don't have the character or the integrity to speak out. And, they just want me to shut up until election time, and they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. And, luckily I have, friends like you, Louisa, over at GoldFish Report, and I have this little flip phone that we can be telling people what happened. But if I didn't, I don't know what I would do, right? Because they can just slander you any way they want to do it, right? When I went to the court, so they rearrested me. They said I violated the terms of my release, and then they, I had to go spend days and days in jail until I can get the court hearing to see did he violate the terms of his release or not. So it was guilty until proven innocent. And then during the court hearing, the officer, the guy who's in charge of watching me, that is out to get me, that wants me to be in jail as much as possible. He essentially could do stuff like he asked his friend that worked for some mental health clinic to watch a couple of my YouTube videos. And so this psychologist watched a couple of my zany YouTube videos and determined, according to him, that I might have some mental issues. So he's up there saying that on the stand. He doesn't really have to provide any evidence. He could just pretty much say, oh, my friend said this, so that. And the judge accepted that. So my lawyer's over here objecting, saying like, excuse me, there's no evidence. He's never been examined by that person. They've never even talked to him. They've watched a couple of his YouTube videos, and all of a sudden the judge is allowing him through his friend to say that I have mental issues because my friend said so. It's just a travesty of justice. It's a total joke. And for my sake, I didn't necessarily have anything super on the line by them making that claim about my mental fitness. But for other people, they do that to other people too, and they'll take people's kids away, right? They'll use that total hearsay, that total garbage, and they'll use that to take people's kids from them, right? So it's totally scary. It's totally unconstitutional. And until we as the people realize that there is no justice coming from this system, and there never will be, and that we need to rise up and demand an end to it. We need to light a fire under our politicians' asses and say, enough is enough. We refuse to accept this for a single second longer. Until we do that, nothing's ever going to change.
Well, it's true what you're saying about taking kids away. Let me just, before I go there, let me just go ahead and ask Scott, did you want to comment on anything that Austin said so far?
Well, other than them using the psychiatric people as enforcers for making sure we look like we're bad people, we're, literally trying to deceive people, committing fraud, this, that, and the other thing. It's kind of like what he said. You are guilty before you even have a trial. Mm-hmm. And in my case, they were trying to coerce my patients to testify against me, mm-hmm. even though everything we had done was legitimate. And they started out just by saying, well, did Dr. Werner do something wrong to you? They said, oh, no, he treated me and he actually got me feeling better. And everyone they went to was like this. So they couldn't even find anybody to testify against me. And yet they got the grand jury to indict me without anybody, bearing the facts about what really happened. And during the entire time I was in prison, they continued to coerce the supposed witnesses by threatening them to take away their federal stipends, rights, Medicare, Medicaid, you name it. They threatened them with being able to withhold this from them and even putting them in jail if they didn't testify against me. And luckily, none of them would testify against me. So I was sitting in jail without any defense whatsoever, because the judge said I couldn't submit any more pleadings and put me in contempt of court because I sent a pleading in saying, you can't take away my right to plead for my own case. And it was very incredible, the coercive effects they use to keep you in prison, to keep you away from having any rights whatsoever. And, to this day, I love this country, but the judicial system is really messed up.
Yeah, it seems that, it is look, if you follow what they did to President Trump with regard to this fake dossier, this, paid for by, look, see at GCHQ, we have documents showing how Susan Rice was asking for additional spying to renew this spying from MI6. And it was ordered from the president, said right in the letter, right from the president. So we know that this came down from the top, and we think that this is why Mark Levin and Austin, before he came on, I shared a clip by Mark Levin, who really went off on the Obama administration, because this was the Obama FBI who was this corrupt and did what they did, and to sabotage not only Donald Trump's presidency, but to also to set up General Flynn and eliminate him. And these are powerful men. Donald Trump is a powerful man. General Flynn is a 3-star general. Honorable, both honorable men, whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter. They're honorable men, right? They're not criminals in any way that we know anything about. So, did you think they deserve something like that? And so, can you imagine? So, this is what they're doing to us. And so, what you guys are talking about tonight is exactly what's playing out on this higher level. This is their MO, and they will do things like set you up. They will do things like provoke you into a situation where they're looking for you to respond in a way that will justify their next move that they're going to do. So for instance, when they took custody of my kids from me, and I did nothing wrong, when they did that, they had sent a bailiff over to me. So I knew something was going on, and they were expecting me to lash out and go crazy and be this, emotional, hysterical woman. And, and I know their game. So I sat there and said nothing, and I got up and I left. So they didn't get to put me in prison because that's what they wanted to do. They were trying to provoke me. And of course that was, a very shocking, but I'll tell you, when your intuition tells you shut up, you do it. But I realized it was a game, and this is a very sick game. Austin, this is a national emergency. As far as I know, the state of Arizona has declared an emergency under the federal national emergency. Did anyone wear masks that were the pod that you were put in? Did anyone who was intaking you or any of the marshals, was everybody wearing a mask, or when you arrived there, was anyone there wearing masks to protect you? Were you offered any kind of sanitizer or masks or anything?
Yeah, so all the guards were wearing masks, and they gave us these little cheap masks that really wouldn't protect us at all. I think it was more of just like a liability, like covering for them.
I see.
And they just wanted us to wear those when we were like walking through the hallway and stuff. But most of the time, they just made us sit in these close quarters with these other guys and go into places that they had not cleaned at all, right? The cells that they throw you into, they don't clean those, like in between people that are in there, they don't clean them at all. So I got luckier this time that my cell wasn't as disgusting as the last time. But the guy next to me got thrown into a cell that was covered in trash, that had, blood smears, that had poop smears, that it was just like totally unsanitary. and the guards never have to clean that. They never have to clean the common area. It's just totally crazy, and it's run. It seems like they do the bare minimum to tell from a liability standpoint with the guards, but with the prisoners, you know, they operate on the assumption like you have no rights, right? You're a criminal, even if you're not convicted, you're a criminal. We don't care about you, and you're just going to do whatever we say, and we're not going to give you enough food to survive. We're not going to let you sleep a full night's sleep. They just, you know, they create all the conditions possible to spread sickness, and they don't care.
Well, on that point, and the reason I'm asking this is because, you know, something that's going to shut down every state, shut down, you know, business, education, every system that we have, you would think that they would, you know, be much more careful, because I'm going to screen share, and I know you can't see this, Austin, but I'm going to screen share an article that was put out by the LA Times regarding this is unbelievable conditions in Terminal Island prison. Inmates have worst coronavirus outbreak in federal prison. Nearly half the inmates at the federal prison at Terminal Island and San Pedro have tested positive for the coronavirus in what has become the nation's worst outbreak in federal penitentiary. As of Tuesday, 443 of the prison's 1,055 inmates has the virus, along with 10 staff members. 2 inmates have already died of complications related to COVID-19, according to the Bureau of Prisons. In a week, the outbreak at FCI Terminal Island has quickly escalated as prison officials ramped up testing. Dozens of inmates have been moved into tents in an effort to create social distancing, according to sources. Family members of inmates say the facility has locked down inmates in an effort to stop the spread of the virus in low-security prison in San Pedro area of Los Angeles. I have to tell you, though, I have had trouble reaching the prison. I have tried to contact the prison, and I haven't been able to get through, and I will continue to try to, because it seems unfathomable. It seems that you don't go into prison in order to be exposed. You don't go into a petri dish. This isn't, you're not sentenced to torture. You know, you're not sentenced to life in prison and death in prison. You know, this is unthinkable that this many people, that there has been nothing to stop the spread of this within the prison system. And, you know, how many of these people are getting ready to be, you know, have done their time and getting ready to be released. And, you know, now they're fighting for their life. So it seems like that the ball has been dropped here. And I do have sources within the prison who are confirming that they are criminal conditions that are happening within the prison, that it's completely overcrowded. And of course it's overcrowded, because you're not going to have half the population get COVID-19 if it's not overcrowded. This particular prison doesn't have individual cells. So it's kind of like a group, from what I understand. It is more of an open general area. And, you know, food is also a problem. And as these conditions worsen, it just seems like the pressure, it's like, you know, a boiling pot, you know, ready to burst, in other words. So, you know, I'm hearing different information than what's actually being reported, some of what's being reported in this statement. And of course, Senator Kamala Harris said in a statement, "We are in a moment of crisis that requires leaders to respond quickly and humanely in the interest of public health." But let's look at California. I mean, this is the poop capital of the country, right? Where we have street signs for human waste. I mean, give me a break. I mean, they're not concerned whatsoever about the health and well-being of the people, especially, particularly the inmates. She says the Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Justice must act immediately to reduce the incarcerated population and to protect those in BOP custody. Right. So what they're doing is they're keeping people in there who are nonviolent offenders, right? They're keeping people in there for like white-collar crimes and mixed with violent offenders. So where does that make any sense? And what has California done recently? California released 5 sexual predators, pedophiles, who then another one of them has actually, of course, committed another crime against a child. It's on our Twitter page. You can go and take a look at that. But it says here, nationwide, 1,313 inmates and 335 staff have tested positive throughout the Bureau of Prison system that holds about 153,000 inmates. Of those, 30 inmates have died of COVID-19 symptoms. It just seems to me, you know, Scott and Winston, you're Scott and Austin, you're both describing the conditions where something like this would run rampant and would actually, I'm sure it's not hard for you to believe that this happened, right?
Yeah. The other thing is they keep it really cold and they don't give you enough clothes to like stay warm. The blankets that they give to the men in the prison I was in, it doesn't it wasn't enough to cover my feet. It would go from maybe my ankles to my mid chest was how long the blanket maybe was. So they make it freezing on purpose. They don't give you enough clothes to stay warm. They don't even give you a blanket. So it's in addition to not being able to sleep, in addition to not being able to stay warm, in addition to not being able to eat, it seems everything possible to be as cruel as possible. And then I got lucky because this particular prison I was at, this prison corporation, their response to the fact that somebody tested positive for coronavirus at that prison was they were canceling all releases. So they said, even though you're supposed to get out today, we're canceling all releases and we're keeping everybody in here for another 14 days, which is like, how does that make sense? So your response to the fact that someone here is sick is to force everybody to stay here with someone who's sick.
Right.
And luckily my lawyer got an emergency hearing and was able to get me out, bend over backwards and pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Right.
But most of the people that are supposed to get out aren't getting out now. The solution to the prison is like, oh, we're going to keep you in here for longer.
Yeah.
So it's just totally ridiculous.
Well, here's another one where it's ABC News. Now, normally I would say use discernment because it is mainstream media. So I'm going to screen share this. This is Deepak Chopra for some reason. Not sure why they've asked him to comment on this, but this is, I hope this isn't a commercial, but it is talking about the same thing. It is talking about the Bureau of Prisons on Friday said that 70%. Now, the first one reported 50%, right? They're lowballing it. LA Times, saying 70% of the inmates the Bureau has tested have come back positive for COVID-19. But the Bureau says that it doesn't reflect the positive rate across the entire BOP system. So they're trying to downplay these numbers. I mean, 70% of any prison is pretty bad. And I have to tell you, there are elderly people who are in this particular location. And of course, they are the most vulnerable of the population in terms of complications and difficulty with, these respiratory problems. Let me just hear what Deepak Chopra has to say about this.
Heartfelt thanks from my heart space to all those who came willingly, voluntarily, selflessly, generously, with kind words, kind thoughts, great energy, enormous love. I say thank you. We've raised,
Okay, I'm sorry that might have been a different video. Sorry about that. But it says that as increased testing opportunities become available, the Bureau of Prisons will increase testing to include asymptomatic inmates. As in many other civilian areas experiencing outbreaks. Look, I mean, let me tell you, if social distancing is what the new mandate is, what on earth are they doing in these prisons? I mean, did they require you to social distance, Austin?
No, not at all. I mean, there's no way you really can social distance, right? You're stuck kind of in a very small quarters with a bunch of other people. So the only reason that I'm not sick is because nobody else that I came in with happened to be sick, and I just kind of got lucky. But there's the guards won't even clean the common areas, right? The inmates are responsible for cleaning everything. And so, they don't even really give us good supplies to do that. So they make it nearly impossible to not get sick if there was an outbreak in there. And they just, they don't care at all. And I think one of the other things people say, they keep saying like, oh, nonviolent offenders are going to get out. And I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, oh, well, they might be nonviolent, but there's still criminals in there. And what I would say is that most of the people in there, in my opinion, are not criminals at all. They were in there for like unbelievably ticky-tacky parole violations, stuff like I was, in the sense of like one guy, he just didn't call his parole officer in time. He was, 5.5 months into a 6-month probation. He had already served his time. He had served 6 months because he took, it's illegal to take more than $20,000 cash over the border, or $10,000 cash over the border, and he took $20,000. They threw him in jail about a year ago for 6 months, and he was like in month 5.5 of his 6-month sentence.
Mhm.
And he's a guy, he has 4 young kids, he has a job. It's, you know, he's living his life, he's doing his thing. And because he didn't call his parole officer back in time, he's now back arrested in prison. And so when people say the nonviolent offenders, I think the gut reflex for a lot of people is to think like, oh, they're still criminals though. But what I would say to those people is like most of the people in there, they're not even criminals. They're in there for the ticky-tackiest BS imaginable, and they don't deserve to be in there at all.
Right. Here's
And so not only,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, not only are they not criminals, now they're stuck and they're getting exposed to coronavirus. So it's just totally a ridiculous system.
Right. And so we have Time reporting the same thing. Over 70% of tested inmates in federal prisons have COVID-19, official figures show, except here they're saying that 50, let me see how many, what's the number I just saw? It was a much higher, 30 inmates have died, not 6. So I'll tell you, the mainstream media can't even get it right. So here we have, as of Wednesday, 30 inmates have died of the coronavirus at federal correctional facilities. Oh, that's all of them, not just this one. Okay, since late March. And it's amazing, you know, Scott and Austin, how the extreme measures that we have all been forced to undergo to stop the spread of this. And yet the inmates are absolutely treated as if they were you know, I mean, this is torturous conditions where, as you're saying, it's so cold you can't even get a blanket, and then of course you can buy one of these cheap sweatshirts in the commissary, I heard you say, but you know, if you don't have you know, money in there, or they only limit how much money you can put in there, and if you're making a choice between a shirt and food, you know, it's one thing to say, okay, someone did something wrong, and you know, they're going to do some time. That means they're going to have their freedom to roam, the rights and privileges taken away. But that doesn't mean that it's okay to subject them to torturous conditions. It doesn't mean, you know, that they should be treated in an inhumane manner. Because like you're saying, I mean, even for you should be in a completely separate facility. You should be in the innocent until proven guilty category, not the guilty, you know, and that's part of the problem. Look, so Scott, what do you think we need to do to address this and try to fix this on a federal level? This is a mess. This is a cesspool, a petri dish of disease and infestation in this particular prison in California. And I'm not surprised that it's in California, knowing what Los Angeles with Skid Row, what that, you know, who knows what's happening and spreading over on Skid Row over there, right? But what do you think we need to do?
Well,
Scott?
number one, go back to the Constitution where you're innocent before you're proven guilty. The whole idea of having these secret courts before they indict you and having a grand jury get just information, false dossiers from the prosecutors that, you know, make you look like you're this guilty sucker, and then they hold a kangaroo court of people that they present this to, and literally you get convicted by the indictments, and you don't go to court, you don't have an opportunity to even prove you're innocent. You're guilty, and you're told you're guilty as you're going through the system, and you're told that you won't win. They take away all your money, all your assets, so that you can't even hire a decent attorney. Right. And they appoint you an attorney who also tells you, well, you're guilty. You know, the people on the, oh gad, what's the name? I said it earlier, but you know, the indictment that they present to you is something they do without your knowledge. They investigate you using thousands and thousands of dollars. All of the investigators are not there to prove innocence or guilt. They're just there to prove you're guilty of something.
Right.
And you know, they're very biased, and you don't have the opportunity to present your evidence at all. At least that was my case. and then they go out
Yeah,
and
mine
try
too.
first witnesses.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about rules of evidence, which, you know, there are rules of evidence, and they just seem to it's like a joke. It's like, because you know why? Because there's no oversight and accountability, and that's why they get away with this.
Well, it's like there is no rules of evidence, right? So for me, they could just say whatever they want, and the judge is assuming that whatever the FBI or whatever this Pitbull Pretrial Services Supervision Officer says is 100% true, and they just take it at face value. And so then it's like you're defending yourself against this wild accusations that they make that are 100% false. And like in my case, the original judge that I had did not want to release me until trial. So they wanted me to stay there for months and months on a crime that is totally preposterous, right? Anybody who looks at it knows that on its face that is totally preposterous. And it's like, how can I've already served time for a crime that I didn't commit, that I've had no chance to defend myself against, right? And it's not like what they're accusing me of is like murder or like raping someone. They're accusing me of sending emails and making phone calls to a multi-billion-dollar corporation to demand files back. And so it's totally crazy. They can put all this embellishment in there, and they do not have to show a single bit of evidence for any of that. It's 100% on their word, and the judge just accepts it. It's totally unconstitutional. It's a travesty of justice. It's how would anybody have the opportunity to defend themselves if the judge just takes the cop's word for everything, and the cops don't even get in trouble for lying. So my pretrial services officer, the judge found that I did not violate the terms of my pre-condition release.
Right.
And so he's a liar, and nothing happens to him, right? He's a court-appointed employee, and even no matter how many times they get caught lying, nothing happens to them. So why wouldn't they just lie, right? They want to keep up their stats, and so they could just say whatever they want. Like if I lie in there, if I go in there, if I swear on the stand and I lie, I can be in huge trouble. But the other side, the cops, they can just lie as much as they want, and the judge is just going to accept their word at face value. And even if it does come out later that it's proven they are liars, nothing happens to them.
Well, that's why this report is called the broken branch, because there's 3 branches of government. Really, there's 4 if you include the Treasury, because that should be included as one of the branches of government. But you have the executive branch, which is the president. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress, and you have the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court and all the judiciary underneath it. And clearly, there's no oversight and accountability. And let me just say, this isn't even only on the federal level, folks. This is on the state level. It's really look, there's no way we can have faith in our judicial system. Look what they did to General Flynn. Look what they did. And this is public. You see, they won't report this about you or me or Scott or anybody else, because we're nobody, right? We're the little guy. So the news won't report this. I'm going to share a clip right now of something that I experienced. I attended a town hall meeting with Governor Christie, and that was used against me because I look, in the Constitution, it says that we have the right to ask for redress of grievance. Yes. And we also have the right to assemble in a public forum. Yes, correct. So I did those things, and then in a courtroom, it was used against me that because I was questioning, I was criticizing the civil justice system, saying that it was denying due process. Then I was a troublemaker because I went to the court. According to them, I was a troublemaker because you're not allowed. In the United States, you're not allowed to tell this is a secret. You can't tell people that it's all fake. You're not allowed to tell people it's all an illusion. It's just to make you think you have rights. Because the minute you walk into a courtroom, folks, you have no rights. You don't get it. It's a joke. So let me share this video real quick. I'm going to just play this clip for a second. Okay, no sound. Here we go. I'm not screen sharing it. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not screen sharing.
We argued for my First Amendment right in the courtroom. He cited my appearance at a town hall meeting that was inappropriate, and somehow that posed a risk to my children. I have never been arrested. I've never had a was never a drug abuser, never had mental health history. And I'm a graduate student, and I've had Woman of the Year awards for my work in making facial prosthetics, and I'm a published author. And I don't think I'm the kind of person that would be a risk to my children. There's no regulation in the family court system. There's no accountability. That's what we need to change. There's no regulation and there's no accountability. So that leaves room for exploitation of women. And a woman's investment in the marriage is front-loaded because of her ability to have to, for reproduction. So our investment is very heavy and very front-loaded in the marriage. So an early divorce does cut a woman short in terms of, these divorce courts are courts of equity, not of justice. So when you bring up issues of custody and unfit or true abuse allegations, they're not handled in a criminal court, they're handled in a family court, which has not been, they were not designed to be handled in a family court. That's not what that was for. It was for equitable distribution. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that there's no accountability, and as much as the federal government funds this, helps every single state, because this is in every state of the nation. Yep. This isn't just New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I brought this to your attention before and your office, that there are, certainly citizens can start forming common law courts so that we can get indictments on illegal activity in the courts, because it's a real monopoly, it's a conspiracy. People are absolutely, if you want your kids back, and I know you love your kids, and I went 86 days without mine, and I will never forget that. And those were the worst days of my life. That was anguish and grief that no parent should ever have to experience. And the judge sat there and laughed because the attorneys, since my question I raised to you is about the political appointment system, and you expressed your frustration about basically rubber stamping it, and it wasn't really your appointment. And that was the comment that you had made. Yeah. The frustration is that there is no accountability. And so it leaves a lot of exploitation for women. Children are being abused, being put in the homes of their abusers. So we need regulation and we need accountability. But we don't want to have, we don't want to be brushed off, because although my custody was restored, it's fragile. I'm bankrupted now. I have no attorney presently, and I'm not entitled to one. Right. So it's going to get worse. They could retaliate again and take them away again. And I'm on the record saying that, I hope you don't try to retaliate again, because now it's a public, note that this is real. This is really happening. And Governor, we really need you to take this seriously, as if your kids are the ones that are being taken away from you at bed at night, because they weren't here for 86 days. I didn't get to kiss my kids goodnight, and they didn't know where their mommy was.
So look, that was a clip that from C-SPAN, where C-SPAN had covered this. That was me talking. This was me talking about what had happened. This is a problem that exists, like I said, on the state level. It's in every state, and part of this is because there's so many people that have their hands in the dish. There's these so-called experts, these so-called, as you were saying before, both Scott and Austin were talking about these so-called psychology experts. I mean, what a I can't even begin to say, right? You have people coming and giving hearsay, double hearsay, and triple hearsay testimony, and nobody gets cross-examined, right?
And the other thing is that they don't fight. They don't try to contest you on the actual facts of the case they're trying to make against you. They just go. They do these ad hominems. They're exactly like the mainstream media. They don't say oh, he's guilty and here's why, because the facts of the matter. They just say, oh, he's a bad guy and he's mentally ill and he's a liar and he's whatever. So they're not actually litigating the facts of the case. They're trying to litigate your ad hominems against the target, right? So it's totally preposterous, and it's one of, like you said, they will. I've been warned not to speak out, not to give interviews after this, and not to name the judges by names, because who knows, they might hear them. And my response to that is like, look, I'm going to speak out because they're going to be out for blood no matter what. I could say the rosiest things about them imaginable, and they would still be trying to screw me over, still be trying to use these flimsy ad hominems to slander me. That's going to be a constant no matter what. And so we just got to get everybody to realize, like, look, there is no justice coming from this system. They can do whatever they want. They can lie as much as they want. They can just crap on our constitutional rights as much as they want. They can throw as much hearsay out there as they want. They could just ask their friend, and because somebody's dumb friend said so, the judge is now accepting that into the court record. It's just totally preposterous.
Yeah, and you know, as I was saying before, this is a private, and most of these prisons are privately run, privately owned, and they aren't, you know, are there some federal conditions that are supposed to be met to protect your health and welfare within these prison systems? I mean, I think it's completely unacceptable. It's outrageous. I mean, what did you think, Austin, when I read this article about 70% of the inmates tested positive? What do you think's going on in there?
I think they just, you know, don't view prisoners as human beings. They and it's not maybe just even the legal system. It's a lot of other, like I grew up in a very hardcore Republican household, and there's that reflex to think, like, to just view people as criminals instead of as people, and to have the idea of the murderer in your mind, like the murderer and the serial killer and the rapist in your mind when you're thinking about all of these federal inmates. Right, because you think, oh, they're in federal prison. They clearly did something bad to get there. And people don't realize that the courts are so crazy that the cops can just lie and throw almost anybody there for any reason. So the fact that they're in federal prison does not mean that they're a criminal at all. And in my case, especially with the 14 guys I came in with, I would say there was 3 legitimate criminals there and 11 people that did not deserve to be there at all. So most of the people are not criminals in those federal prisons. As far as my limited experience, like the sample size that I had, most of the people there were not criminals, did not deserve to be there at all.
Let me ask Scott if you want to comment on anything up to this point, Scott.
Well, the word I was looking for,
you got it.
or, you know, with the indictment and everything. You know, they have these courts that they literally present the evidence against the person, and these lay people are not given anything to do with what may have actually happened because you don't have any defense. Mm-hmm. So these grand juries indict people, and they go in and they tell these lay people in a secret court, and they tell them also, you know, it's your job to make sure we clean up America, you know. And they present this evidence that seems irrefutable because these are private investigators, state investigators, federal investigators, and it's like General Flynn. Mm-hmm. My God. The guy was a decorated soldier, had done so much good, and yet they made him look like this horrible criminal and got rid of him out of the White House, and they almost got the president removed from office with a bunch of lies. And if it can happen to them and it's happening to us, something definitely needs to change.
Something's very, very wrong. Austin, what do you suggest? What do you think we can do to fix this?
Well, I think obviously, like, forcing them to actually, like, forcing us to go back to a situation where it's innocent until proven guilty, where someone like me is not able to be thrown a single day in jail until they actually prove the crime that they're saying I committed. The other thing is they came, like, I have evidence on my computer, right, that I had a contract with the company that they're saying I'm extorting. So that's exonerating evidence, and I will not be able to get that exonerating evidence until we go to trial because the FBI took all of my computers and phones.
Right.
So stuff like
under discovery of the right to that information, you should have done a habeas corpus, which meant you wanted to see the evidence right immediately that they had to hold you. They're not
doing that right now because of coronavirus.
Right. So it's suspended because of a national emergency, which is the only time you can suspend habeas corpus. But it's a very, very serious thing. And, you know, look, when did the Constitution ever say we can suspend our rights because of fear of catching a virus? I mean, come on, guys, we're really expanding the definition here of, of, security to the degree that we have now, given ourselves a trial sample of socialism, actually fascism. So how do you all like it? You're right. We don't have the rights. It is out of control. It is the broken branch. There is no oversight, no accountability. You have Congress who are investigating the investigators because they're dishonest. They're liars. They're dirty cops. How can any of the American people have faith in our judiciary when the people at the top highest levels of our judicial system are themselves the crooks?
Well, the Clintons educated the judges on drug cartels. They educated them on all of these different things. And, you know, the Clintons were the ones that allowed the cocaine to be flown into Arkansas. And so, you know, when they did 9/11 and the Patriot Act occurred, that suspended our innocence before being proven guilty. And so we've had a lot of things happen at the highest levels that have caused us to lose our constitutional right. We need to bring back the republic.
And it's not just at the highest levels. Like, these organizations are fundamentally corrupt, like from the top down. A lot of people like to say, like, oh, but there's a lot of good cops in there, and there are some. That's true, but like, these organizations are fundamentally corrupt. The agents that pulled this crap on me are not at the highest level, and they are fundamentally corrupt. They do not care about our rights. They're allowed to just throw hearsay out. That's another thing. We got to rein in hearsay, right? The fact that an officer can just come in and make an assertion and provide zero evidence besides "my friend told me so," that's crazy, and that's a fast track to hell if we allow that kind of totally preposterous hearsay to stand up, right? We need cops to be proving that. I think we also need to have some sort of accountability system for judges. So if you're just totally crapping on people's rights, and it's not just that, like, because right now the only way you can remove a judge is for like the, really aggressive or really extreme malfeasance, right? And we need to have some sort of scorecard that says, look, if you're just going to allow hearsay, you need to be out of here, right? If you're going to just not care about people's constitutional rights, you need to be out of here. And we need to be assessing that they need to know that we're watching them every single day, every single case, that every single one matters. And if you are grossly deviating from legal and constitutional norms, and I guess the legal precedents have been set, so they might make the case that they weren't deviating. But if you, once we rein this in, we need to say, if you are not following the law, if you're crapping on due process, if you're not strictly adhering to the principle of innocent until proven guilty, you need to be fired as a judge. We have no use for you, and we should not feel sorry for anyone that gets aggressively removed in to that end.
I'm screen sharing an article right now, and I know that in your recent debriefing with Baby Q Plus, I'm sorry, Q, is that what it's called? I'm sorry.
Yep, that's the channel.
Baby Q Plus channel on YouTube. This is only one. This is a New York Post article. This was about Kids for Cash. This was corrupt Kids for Cash judge ruined more than 2,000 lives. And this is the story. Let's see, hold on a second. This judge was sentenced, who sentenced around 3,000 children in a similar manner, was later sentenced himself to 28 years in prison for financial crimes related to his acceptance of $2.2 million as a finder's fee for the construction of a for-profit facility in which to house these so-called delinquents. The scandal was called Kids for Cash, and it rocked the state of Pennsylvania in 2009 for the accusations that Civarella, which was the judge's name.
Most people really enjoy that.
You're on, Audrey. You're unmuted. Hold on a second. Gonna have to, okay, he's muted again. Okay, so for the accusation that Civarella was happy to tear families apart in exchange for the payoff. This is horrible, horrible. The anger these families had at this judge who deliberately was paid off to do these private, was involved in really sentencing kids, you know, for very minor things into this juvenile place that ruined their lives. You know, for a profit, because, and he felt he could do it because there was no oversight, because he was immune. And so that's what we have to remove. We have to remove the immunity that all these people have from prosecution, right? Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we need to make like strenuous, like, I don't know, quarterly, yearly, some kind of review to where every single one of their cases is examined, and that their job is up. They could potentially be fired every single year. It's one of those things when we get these jobs that you're just tenured for life. That is a horrible, perverse incentive to just do whatever you want.
Isn't it? Didn't Jesus say, "Judge thou as you would judge? You would want them to judge you." Something to. What's the quote there? You guys know it.
Judge not that ye not be judged, and have that judgment meted out to you, is what Jesus said. And what he meant by that is all of us need to be careful how we judge others. And,
Right.
you know, these judges, they control your life, and they can determine whether you're put away, your children are taken away, you know, and right now, they're going to force us to take vaccinations. We don't even know what's actually going to be in these vaccinations.
Right.
And, you know, from what I've been told, it's going to have little trackers in every one of these to prove that we've taken the dose. But what actually are they tracking? You know?
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because they're going to mandate us to get something. It's going to have a tracker in it with your name, your number, your social security number, everything on that tracker, so they know if you've had the vaccine or not.
So you're talking about an RFID chip that will be implanted into every human. Yeah, exactly. So let's just say that, you know, look, yes, it's broken. And as Austin has said, not everybody who works within the judiciary, not all judges are corrupt. It's just not statistically possible. Look what they did now in defense of Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, was there any justification whatsoever for what they did to that man? And I fully had complete compassion for this person who's a judge. So I'm not trying, and please don't take this the wrong way, because I know who watches this report, but I'm trying to say we have a very big problem that for far too long has been ignored, because it is the central power mechanism. It is the mechanism by which the deep state ensures that there's no leaks to the press, to make sure and control that all the narrative is completely controlled, that anybody who speaks out is retaliated against, and through the use of the court system. So the court system, which is also a private corporation, these courts are registered. They have done Bradstreet ratings because they're private corporations. They do make money on all of the fees that are collected, and from what I understand, the dockets are also monetized at the Treasury, which means that the prepaid accounts that were established for humanity are being robbed by these, and not just the judiciary, by corporations. In fact, you know, we've talked about this on the GoldFish Report before. By virtue of your signature on anything, any company can take it to the Treasury and monetize that. So don't go filling out applications for something unless you really, really want it, because when you do that, they can take that signature and they can go monetize it at the Treasury, and it's perfectly legal. Well, it's not legal, but it's legal because the Treasury was in on it. So, you know, there's so much fraud. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, and obviously, like you said, not every person, a member of this system, is corrupt, but we need to stop allowing that nuance to make people believe that there's any redeeming qualities to the system at large. The system is fundamentally corrupt, and it has no legitimacy. There's no justice claim whatsoever. So even if there are some individuals that work within it that aren't corrupt, the system, the organization, the system itself is fundamentally corrupt and needs to be burned to the ground and rebuilt in the spirit of our constitutional values, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's irredeemable.
You're right, and it has to be changed there because there has to be accountability, and there is no accountability, and we can see this playing out right in front of our faces with the president and with General Flynn. Now, like I said, it exists on all levels. I have seen judges, believe me, I've been before many judges, and I have seen some judges who really, really take their job very seriously. They really try to you know, they do a good job. They're good attorneys as well. And because they're trying to follow the Constitution. And then not only that, they have to also use their own discernment, which is, you know, in some of these courts, there's way too much latitude. And, you know, that's a term that is thrown around so loosely in the courtrooms because, you know, well, we don't, you know, you have to follow the Constitution. Well, they have so much latitude. No, it's a constitutional right. You don't have an option. You don't get to negotiate that. So this is really how it's treated in some of the courtrooms. But I have seen some judges who truly, you know, take jurisprudence very seriously. Unfortunately, there's just the ones who are really, really super corrupt are the ones that really ruin it for all of them. And I'm sure that you have your own. I'm sure they have their own struggles within the judiciary, trying to what is the term? Reconcile that themselves, because, you know, not every judge is corrupt, but those who are seem to be extremely corrupt, and they seem to be tied into some very, very seedy business, like perhaps.
Yeah, and it's not even just corruption either. Like, I wouldn't even put the judges that I've dealt with, I wouldn't even put all of them in the bucket of corrupt. I would just put them in the bucket of, like, they're perpetuating a system that is nakedly preposterous, right? It's not necessarily corrupt that she accepts the officer's word at face value, but that is preposterous that the precedent in that court is that any officer can come in there and make any sort of accusation and provide zero evidence whatsoever, provide not even names of the people making the charges, and the judge just accepts that at face value, right? Because that's what the other judges before them might have accepted. So we have these, like, decades and decades and decades of these horrible precedents that have been building up on each other. It's like we got shot and we had this wound dressed, and, you know, the blood soaked through the bandages, so we just put another one on and put another one on and put another one on. And now it's this green, rotting, festering grossness that is, you know, several inches thick. And we need to realize that there's no incremental changes or adjustments that are going to make that any better. It needs to be completely scraped off and completely redressed in a whole new way. And until we do that, we're just going to have a rotting carcass of a justice system.
Yeah, and when it comes to the family courts, I have to tell you, and, you know, there's so many people involved in the gravy train of, you know, passing the buck. Years ago, Alex Jones did do an interview with Senator Nancy Schaefer, who went in Congress. She was a senator of Georgia, and she exposed the fraud that was going on within CPS. And we do know we have a big child trafficking problem. You know, the president has issued executive orders to stop human trafficking and seize assets of individuals involved in human trafficking and crimes against humanity. The president seems very serious about this. He was also serious about criminal justice reform. But I don't know if that included the prison system, because 70% of inmates is an egregious, it's, you know, in my opinion, it would be considered negligent. Because there was no, they had no, I don't know. Do they have any common sense to prevent this? Let me just screen share this really quick. This a very short clip from Alex Jones. Actually, this is not that short, but I'll try to find a. We'll just play a minute or two of it, just so you can get an idea of what was going on with Senator Nancy Schaefer. And of course, everybody knows what happened to her and her husband. They were murdered. So if you haven't figured out yet that we live in a completely controlled fascist, a country that it's been infiltrated, okay? We didn't have an invasion, it was infiltrated, and it was taken over from the inside, which was our greatest weakness as a free society, okay? So it has happened, and the problem is it's so pervasive, it's so widespread, it's in government, it's in religion, it's in education, higher education, it's in politics, obviously. Look, if you go into family court, you're going to get an attorney ad litem, a guardian ad litem assigned to your case, whether you need it or not. You're going to have psychological evaluations. You're going to have pass the buck. These are paupers, forma pauperis, right? This is under Rule 21. For people who cannot afford this. Now, this isn't a criminal case in family court, so you're not entitled to having an attorney appointed to you. So you have to somehow find money to hire these lawyers. I can tell you $100,000 easily on just my side alone for a divorce that's still ongoing 8 years later for justice, okay? Because you don't just take kids away from parents, fit parents, because you want to retaliate against them. You want to abuse your power under color of law. You don't do that. And there's going to be justice. And I won't stop until there is justice, because this is a sick abuse of power. Just like General Flynn, just like what they did to President Trump. So how many people can't even afford attorneys? How many people go bankrupt, lose their kids, and have no recourse whatsoever? Too many. And Nancy Schaefer was trying to expose that they basically have orders. They take orders to go into homes and get certain children. And you know what? When you have the power of the state behind you, you have no chance in hell to get your kids back, right? So if they want your kids to feed this sick child trafficking, adrenochrome, infesting, what do you call it? The royal death cult, Austin? That's what's feeding all of this, folks. That's what's feeding it. And the courts have to protect that. The courts have to protect that flow of children who they need to traffic, exploit, and murder. So that's why this is happening. So let me just go and screen share this so you can listen to it.
Video of her giving a speech, and in 5 minutes, she boiled everything down I try to explain about the CPS and the bounties on taking kids and how there's no due process. She's State Senator 50th District. Senator Schaefer serves her constituency in 8 counties that make up 50th District in Georgia. She's got a long, illustrious career out there fighting corruption. She's also the head in her state of the Eagle Forum. And so she now joins us, and we appreciate her standing up eloquently and fighting this. And so we appreciate Senator Schaefer for coming on. Nancy, it's good to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's good to be on with you. I appreciate all you're doing.
Thanks for holding while I was ranting for 5 minutes about the DHS document saying veterans are the #1 threat to Homeland Security. Yeah. Were you aware they're training the Boy Scouts for gun confiscation?
Well, I've heard that they are training boys. I didn't know that it's Boy Scouts.
Yeah, it's Boy Scouts, school groups, public school groups. This is just one. What do you think of all the new documents coming out demonizing veterans on a separate issue? Oh,
it's awful. It's just awful. It's unconstitutional and it's wrong, and you just can see the direction that we're headed.
I got to be honest with you, Senator. I mean, I knew the globalists were evil, but it's even hard for me to believe they're this bold.
Yes, it is.
I mean, training 14-year-olds to go after the military. I mean, that's right out of East Germany.
That's right. This is that community service that we're hearing all about.
Absolutely.
But it certainly has a different definition, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Ma'am, I'm going to try to just sit back and shut up, because I'd like you to break down, but with a little bit more time, what you gave in that speech. I know you've given a lot, but I saw this particular speech of you, I believe, before the Eagle Forum, really laying out the facts of just how unconstitutional and Kafkaesque the CPS is.
Right. Well, it is unconstitutional, and I'm sure you have many listeners that know that children are being taken away from their parents in a ruthless kind of behavior by caseworkers and social workers and investigators, and the bureaucracy is very huge. that also includes lawyers and judges and therapists and others who take these children from their parents without a cause. And of course, we know that money is being made because of this, and I am convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that the parents across this country need to be warned of the dangers of the Child Protective Services nationwide.
Yeah.
You want me to just continue on, don't you?
Sure, Senator, lay it out.
Well, the Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire that we see going on around us, and it's built on taking children and separating families. As a matter of fact, I could throw in here now that it appears to me that the family is going to have to be destroyed in order for the one world government to completely develop. But this is the taking of children by a protected empire, and this is not to say today that there are not those children who are really being abused, who need to be removed from the wretched situations that they may be in.
But it needs to be done through due process.
Yes, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the families that are having children removed from them with no cause, and then there is no due process available to them after this has happened. And in one county in my district, I had 37 families brought together one Saturday morning in the library to allow them to, without any press and without any Child Protective Services pressure there, to tell their stories. And it was absolutely unbelievable to hear these parents, single dads, single mothers, telling and other parents telling their stories of how their children had been picked up in the middle of the night, off of the school buses, out of schools, out of hospitals, even while they are nursing, and these families had never seen those children again. You have never seen such agony, such suffering, and such crying. And we had 50 families standing outside the door that were not allowed to come in because we already had 37 families inside. It was truly just seeing the work of the Gestapo coming against these families and taking their children from them, never to be seen again.
All right, I'm going to stop right there because, I mean, it gets worse and worse and more heart-wrenching as you go on. And I think she definitely summed it up. A protected empire. Austin, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another example of guilty until proven innocent, right? Where they can just come in and they can take your kids, or they can throw you in jail, or they can do whatever they want. And unless you have the money and the resources to fight them, and even sometimes if you do, that still doesn't guarantee your success. It's the scales are so tilted in their favor that it's a total bastardization of justice, right? There is nothing even remotely resembling justice about our justice system.
Right, and due process is, it just seems to me like it just they're just telling us that we have this, because in actuality we don't. So in other words, are they lying to us, Scott?
Oh, I think they made up the laws and they're doing what they do best, is make money for the system. And they're not, don't get me wrong. I love this country. This is the best country in the world. But, we're moving more and more to a socialist fascist state where if you're not an asset to the state, you're going to either be put in prison or killed. And right. It's sad, but the Republic of the United States needs to be brought back more than ever right now. And that's what we need to do.
Right. Let me ask Austin, if you want to weigh in on this whole aspect of the family court system and let's just say CPS being used as the supply chain for the child trafficking. What do you think about that?
I think it's something that I've witnessed firsthand. So one of the things that I call them the Q-fairs who've been trying to snipe me with lately is a situation where I was down in Tucson and I was busting up, or I was causing mass defections among an organization called Veterans on Patrol Alpha Company. And it's one of those great examples of like the smoke and mirrors that happens with this system, of where this group, it's a veterans group. And, most of the people there are well-intentioned, but the people who run it, they go out and they search in the desert. They pretend to be, anti-child trafficking. They pretend to be like rescuing kids. But they actually go out there and they accept the kids that they find from the traffickers, and they go and give them right to the Child Protective Services in Tucson that is hopelessly corrupted, that's going to sell them into trafficking. So it's one of those like up is down, left is right, in is out. It's just totally crazy how corrupt the Child Protective Services is, to the degree of where a lot of the human traffickers know, like, hey, if I want to get somebody into the United States, just send them through that Child Protective Services thing, and it'll we'll get essentially a kid ahead in our system scot-free.
Yeah. Do you think that they are well-intended, or do you think that they're deliberately handing these kids over, knowing that this is what is happening to them?
I think the system, originally was probably the people who passed the laws creating the system were well-intended. I think there's, some high percentage of people that work within it that are well-intended. Mm-hmm. But the system itself is hopelessly corrupt and needs to essentially be burned to the ground and rebuilt. And at this point, there's so many kids.
Veterans.
Go ahead.
Do you think they're aware of what happens? Do you think they're doing the right thing by handing them? Do you think that they believe they're doing the right thing by handing them over to CPS?
The leaders of the group knew exactly what they were doing. The guy that came along tried to approach us knew exactly what he was doing. That's why he knew exactly what I was doing. That's why he wanted me to get out of there.
Okay, Austin, you're a little muffled, so I don't know.
How's this?
That's better. Okay, it's better.
So I would say the people who volunteer to go help them are well-intended, but the people who actually run that group know exactly what they're doing. It was run by this meth head called Screwy Louie, who, is a known human trafficker and is deliberately distracting law enforcement away when there isn't things to be taken care of. And then whenever the law enforcement gets sick of kind of pandering to their nonsense, then they have free reign to go out in the desert and be taking these kids and giving them straight to traffickers.
This really, it's interesting time, because we have to talk about these cases. We have to talk about it because it's all connected and it's all related. You can't talk about what's going on with General Flynn without talking about the, millions, I would say, of Americans over the past, many decades that have been caught up, and kids who have been caught up, families who have been caught up in these CPS services. And, there's no recourse. Folks, I don't know what more I can say. I don't know what more what more evidence I can show you, talking about General Flynn, talking about looking at this overpopulated prison, how there's no in terms of due process, in terms of, it's a joke taking hearsay statements. You have people, that they're making money off of this, right? So judges have what's called an 801k account, right? And they get a percentage of the court filing fees. How can they possibly be impartial to making decisions? And not only that, a lot of times people file frivolous lawsuits against you anyway. We're not even talking about criminal. We're talking about civil. Can you imagine, folks, what it's like being dragged into civil court? Now, these cases with CPS, these cases with family courts, they're not dealt with in a criminal court. You're not entitled to an attorney. These families go bankrupt. And in a recent documentary called Divorce Corp, the movie, Gloria Allred, an attorney, who everyone knows, stated, she had a cameo appearance in it, and she stated, you only get as much justice as you can afford. And most people can't afford any justice. So justice is for sale in America. Wake up, people. Wake up. When it happens to you, it's going to be, there's not going to be anybody there to help you. And unless you're well connected and you have very deep pockets, you know, you're going to be looking at having your civil liberties trampled on. You're going to have your constitutional protections completely violated and stripped from you, and there's no recourse. It's amazing. It just amazes me how people just say, "Oh, well, it's my First Amendment, it's my protection." Yeah, right. Unless you can afford to defend that, you have no protection. You have no constitutional rights. You don't just walk into a court and say to a judge, "Oh, I'm protected. It's my constitutional right." Sorry, folks, but it doesn't happen that way, does it?
That's why we got to vote to bring back our rights. Period.
Restored Republic, right. We're under a corporation, USA Corporation. We are under corporation right now. A lot of people don't know that we have two constitutions. So our original organic constitution has been hijacked for a corporate constitution, which has made us all, that's what the Admiralty law is. So it made us all vessels, it made us all ships, it made us either dead, it made us ships, or it made us corporations. Because in court, your name only appears in capital letters. Judge wears a black robe because they're presiding over a dead person, right? You're dead. You only see capital letters on what? A corporation. I'm sorry. Yeah, on a vessel, a ship, or on a tombstone. So once you realize that you're not being dealt with as a human being, these are administrative courts. So these are things that we talked about. We've done a lot of GoldFish reports on the concept of being on the public and the private side, it's a system of control. So anyone who does talk about it is retaliated against quite severely. So look, folks, if this is the America you want to live in, then I guess you're pretty happy. But if it's not, then I implore every one of you to realize that we are the checks and balances. It's our responsibility. We, the people. Okay? We're already being shown through what's happening on mainstream media, finally, that, and they're not even really talking about General Flynn. They're still trying to find fault with the president. I mean, I can't believe there's still people watching this baloney on television and believing. I was in a hair salon and this older lady walked in. I'm sitting there waiting to get my hair shampooed, and lady walks in. And I was just reporting from the White House. I just come back from one of my trips reporting from the White House. And she's sitting there saying to me, she's saying, "Oh, can you believe Trump and, the women that he was paying off? He was paying off this stripper and how terrible to do this to his wife." And I'm looking at her like, do you know what I do? You have no idea who you're talking to. Not like I'm anybody important, but it's like, I do report on the president. And I was just at the White House, and I'll tell you, you got it completely wrong. They're just completely feeding BS lies to the American people. And they can, because the Smith-Mundt Act, which is the law that prohibits the government from using propaganda against its citizens and fake news, was repealed by Barack Obama in 2012. So it is legal then for the government to use propaganda to keep Operation Mockingbird going and to keep the fake news going. And, you might be asking yourself why the president hasn't yet restored the Smith-Mundt Act. Austin, what do you think?
I think it's just not as easy of a thing as the president has nowhere near as much power as we feel like he does, or as we're led to believe that he does. The president is largely a frozen steering wheel. I'm not saying that Trump needs our air support as the general population to really get the transportation.
Again, I'm not hearing you very good. It's a little bit muffled.
I was saying that the presidency is a lot more of an impotent position than we're maybe led to believe that it is.
Okay.
So it just underscores the degree. It's largely a frozen steering wheel. So, and there's a lot of people around him that can be thwarting what he wants, right? So right now and throughout his presidency, the CIA and elements of the deep state have not wanted to leave the war in Syria, right? And so they're fighting him tooth and nail. Even when he orders them to pull out, they just pretty much say no. So it underscores the degree to which we as the general population need to be coming in and raising hell, calling our Congress people, calling the White House, and providing him the air support that he needs to be making some of these sweeping changes that we need done in our country.
Yeah, and it's a time where you have this project going on, Austin, where Phoenix Vault, where you have this project where these FBI from the FBI Vault, I guess it's called, right? These released, I guess, through FOIA or declassified documents are released to the public, and people are going to be looking through them and reporting on them, because of course the mainstream media is not doing their job by doing it. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it is a big data tool to help us crowdsource up insights and the juiciest bits of these massive document dumps that keep coming out. So a lot of times our government, when they have to declassify things, and they don't want us to know what it is, they just bury it tens of thousands of documents deep in these massive dumps. So what this tool that Patriot Phoenix is running point on developing for us all is a big data tool that will do OCR on all the documents, will help us, so if you wanted to type, like in this JFK files, for example, if you type J. Edgar Hoover, you want to see every spot where J. Edgar Hoover is talking in there, you could just type that up and it will kind of pull those to the forefront for you. And so what it will allow us to do is it'll allow us all to be, blowing through those as quickly as possible and sharing the best parts. And it'll be a vehicle in which it won't just be for the JFK docs, it won't just be for finders. It'll be a vehicle that every, person, whether it's not just in the United States, but everywhere, when they get these massive document dumps, they can be using the power of the crowd to crowdsource up the best parts of that and be getting that to people's attentions quickly while it's still fresh. So it's a really awesome tool that he's developing for us, and it's going to be called phoenixvault.info. And what I wanted to throw out there was so it's going to be a decentralized tool. And so, obviously when you're doing this sort of research, you're very prone to sabotage, right? The deep state doesn't like their secrets being found out. So it's going to be created in a decentralized way to where there won't be any single point of attack. And so if you wanted to help with that, you'll be able to download a little piece of a program onto your computer and run that off of your computer and be, helping out with the research and being able to get the word out there as quickly as possible. So it's a really snazzy thing. We're shooting for a May 17th launch date for the minimum viable product, so like the version 1. And I actually wanted to throw out there tonight that if there's any computer ninjas that would like to volunteer their skills, we're looking for some JavaScript developers, specifically Node.js. So if anybody is well-versed in that server-side version of JavaScript, the Node.js specifically, if they could be sending an email to qteamstaff@gmail.com, that's qteamstaff@gmail.com. We'll have Patriot Phoenix take a look at that, and if you got the right qualifications, we would absolutely love your help with that. And that's going to be an awesome tool. It's going to be, by the people for the people, and it's really going to help us rise from our ashes and blow through some of these huge government document dumps of places where they're trying to hide stuff from us.
Okay, good. And does this also include some of the WikiLeaks files or documents?
So it potentially could. So it's really the tool itself is meant to where we can lock and load these massive document dumps, and it will do like the OCR, which is like the computer reading all the words and putting together tags and metadata, and so it makes it easily searchable, and so you can kind of map. If this guy's mentioned in 5 different spots, but that's over the course of 50,000 pages, you can just kind of type in a name, type in a place, type in a concept, type in a phrase of what you're looking for, and you can pull that stuff up quickly instead of having to just scroll through tens of thousands of pages of documents. And then there'll be a website where we'll have a point system. So, if you're a really sweet researcher and you're helping us find the best stuff, that you'll get the recognition for that. And it will also, so there was a tool during the election with WikiLeaks that was put together by MIT Media Lab. And it was like a similar kind of a big data visualization tool to help make sense of all of Hillary's emails, right? Because if you're not super technical, it's kind of hard to get through all that, especially with just all the stuff going on and all the extraneous information. So one of the comments of that tool was the discernment power too.
Oh, we're losing you, Austin.
There
you go. You're
so
back.
one of the problems it took, or one of the problems with that tool, was the server power it took to run that was quite astronomical, right? So if you have thousands of people logged into this thing and they're all using a bit of the server power, it takes, even on the cheapest hosting account, tens of thousands of dollars a year to be able to run that. And so what this will be is a decentralized tool where you'll be able to download a piece of the program and use the computing resources from your own computer to run that on your own. So that way, we don't have a centralized server there. So in case CIA gets mad at us, they can't just go to whoever our hosting provider is and shut us down, or they can't just hack one spot. So it'll be a snazzy tool, and it will be a mechanism, a vehicle for not just American document dumps, but for document dumps all over the world. So I know they're also building in a transcription and translation service. So we want to be able to, if there's parts of the document, I know that parts of the JFK documents, they are dealing with Russian, parts of them are Ukrainian. So, whatever language that a particular set of documents is in at a time, we want to be able to be dealing with that easily and quickly, and using the power of big data to just blow through that and get to the best insights quickly.
Okay, so this is, and what you're looking for are digital soldiers to do the reporting on these data dumps when they look through it and they do their research. Then what are you hoping people will do with that when they, let's just say somebody takes something and says, look, I just did a review on 500 pages, or I just did a review on 1,000 pages, and these are some really shocking things that I think the public should know about. What are you asking people or hoping people will do with that information?
Well, so we're gonna be making into the tool. It's gonna be
Can't hear you. I'm sorry. The audio is.
Okay, let me walk over.
Try that again. Okay.
So we're going to be building into the tool a mechanism to be sharing that quickly on social media. So there's kind of the three phases of. For phase one, we need developers to help us be getting the tool off the ground and running. Obviously, Patriot Phoenix is a really awesome computer ninja, but it's just a lot of time and effort. So we're looking for somebody who knows Node.js to be helping him program the thing in the first place. And then the next step of that is we're going to be looking for independent researchers. And it's one of those things you can kind of do it at your own leisure, right? You don't need to commit to doing, hours and hours of work. If you just got a little time here and there, we're happy to have your help in that regard too. So there's going to be the programmer step one, the researcher step two. And as the researchers start sharing things, then that'll be where the people like, GoldFish Report or like other independent media sources can be coming in and reporting on that.
Right.
And getting the juiciest bits of that, the most damning revelations of that, served up to them on a silver platter. So that way you can focus on conveying the information to the public at large, as opposed to just endlessly searching through tens of thousands of pages of documents.
Well, I'll tell you, this is very refreshing, because I can tell you right now, people are so sick and tired of hearing what the mainstream media has to say. They're really disgusted, and they had to. And of course, because you're part of the Q team, that it had to happen this way. You had to really expose this kind of corruption this way, so that the people themselves, it's like if you tell somebody how corrupt it is, they're not going to believe it. But when they go through it and experience it themselves, when they intrinsically come to the conclusion themselves, rather than being told something, then it carries far, far more weight. So doing it this way really is very wise, and it is the best way to do it, because like I said, when people intrinsically come to that conclusion and see things for themselves, then they are convinced, because they trust themselves more than they even trust somebody else. So, mainstream media or whatever.
And there's also like a lot of situations where people grab documents from here or there, and it's not always easiest to tell, like, is this 100% real? Is this not 100% real? So we're going to have our technical experts there. When they lock and load documents into that system, the people that are searching through that will be able to know that there's some, world-class experts that have already verified that these documents that we're looking through are the indisputable, authentic iteration of these documents.
Yeah, I will say this. There is someone I have interviewed on the GoldFish Report who actually was mentioned in the Q posts, who has already done something like this, but it's not quite as well known, and it hasn't gone quite as far out. But some of these documents have made their way to Congress, from what I understand. So this, I think, this database might be, slightly different in content than this other one. But let me just ask Scott if you have any comments about what we're talking about right now, and if not, I want to ask Audrey if he wants to jump in, because I know Audrey may have some comments. But let me ask Scott to please step in at this point and make some comments if you like.
Well, it's important that we get our facts straight, and we don't just believe something because we've been told by somebody, especially on the media, because, the media is definitely ran by the CIA. They've been giving us our information for 30 years now. And the U.S. needs information. The people need to know the truth about what is going on, because we need to make good decisions about where we're going to go from here. Because even this pandemic has been such a kibosh. It's just, it's furthering an agenda of the deep state. They knew if they could destroy the economy, they could possibly destroy Trump getting reelected. Right. And part of this pandemic is that. And yet everybody's like, oh, no, it's important that we did what we did. Well, yeah, but it's one of those things that there's other things going on underneath that we need to be made aware of. A lot of us, we're asleep. We literally accept that other people are going to watch out for our right. Well, that's the problem.
Right.
We've turned socialist, and we're watching each other, and we're watching the mainstream media that we think is giving us the facts, and they aren't. And so we need to find the facts ourselves. So, Audrey, do you have a comment?
Yeah, before you do that, I see 80 thumbs up and 3 thumbs down. Who puts 3 thumbs down on a video like this? It's got to be a never mind.
They probably
Audrey,
just didn't want to hear the truth.
It's got to be a cute Pharisee. Okay, Audrey, are you with us still? Did you want to jump in and make any comments about the topics that we've covered? Because we're talking about the broken branch and what we need to do to fix this, because clearly everybody knows America's waking up to the fact that there's major corruption, not only within the judiciary, but within government as a whole. And we are at a point where, the people have to become the checks and balances. And I think a lot of people would rather sit this one out, but you don't get that chance really in this country.
We don't
Audrey,
have that opportunity anymore. We're at that point where we need to voice that we want our liberties back.
Audrey, are you with us? Are you able to jump in? I'm not quite sure that he's able to jump in, but if he can, he'll let me know. Yeah,
he's muted too, so.
Right, he may need to be. I'm not quite sure. He's got some computer. He's a computer whiz too, by the way, Austin. You might want to reach out to Audrey at some point. He's a real computer whiz. Yeah, so I think at this point, we realize and we see what's happening in the media with General Flynn, and just think of all the stories that aren't being told. Here's another one called No Way Out. This is a Holly Collins story, and this is also a very well-known story about a mother whose children were being abused by the father. I mean, to the point where the son had a fractured skull and she had the x-rays to prove it. And the custody was awarded to the father. Now, why on earth would any court do such a thing? And her only, there was no way out, and that's the name of her story. And she had to leave the country with her kids, and she sought asylum in the Netherlands. And lived there until their kids were of age. There was, I think, a America's Most Wanted clip that somebody must have seen in a neighbor or something, and they turned her in over there in the Netherlands. But at that point, she did come back to the United States, and from what I understand, I don't believe that there was any crimes committed. But I'll tell you something else. Some mothers are marrying off their children as teenagers in arranged marriages in order to emancipate them from the corruption of the court system. I mean, it really is so desperate, folks. Why should mothers be doing this across the country just to protect their children? Folks, I'll tell you what epidemic we have, and it isn't COVID-19. Okay, we have an epidemic. The plague that the president refers to is the plague of corruption. It's the swamp that he was elected to drain. And we're still waiting, Mr. President, to see the draining. We're still waiting to see these corrupt people be held accountable. And not only that, as you're saying, Scott and Austin, we want to see change. We want to see that there's going to be accountability. We don't want this pushed under the carpet. We don't want it shoved under the rug. We want to know that because there's no other way for the government, for the judiciary to restore the faith in the American people, in the judicial system. There's no other way to restore faith. America has lost faith in the judicial system because it is so rampant. It is a culture of corruption. And it has to be completely cleansed and changed and transformed. That's what it needs to do. It needs to completely transform. Did you want to comment on that, Austin? We're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes here. So why don't you add any final comments that you have as we start to wrap this up?
Yeah, I would just echo what you said. Like, we just need to be helping people wake up to the fact that this system is not redeemable, and that, you know, a great way, you know, in the meantime of voting, I think one of the biggest things we can do to help us take our voices back is to be demanding an Internet Bill of Rights, because a lot of these conversations that we're having, a lot of times when we're, you know, putting evidence out there, they get kind of pushed to the margin. And they're not covered in mainstream media, and we have social media trying to silence us and trying to not let the word on this get out. So I think one of the best ways we can help reform our system is to be calling and emailing people in the Freedom Caucus and calling and emailing people in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, like to try to get kind of a triangulation thing going, demanding an Internet Bill of Rights and demanding criminal justice reform, you know, because like you said, this system is totally rotten and needs to be revamped from the ground up. And if people can't see that by now, you know, there's plenty of evidence out there. We just kind of got to get out there and explain it to them. To all the normies out there that maybe aren't engaged as much in this, I think this is the best opportunity we will ever have to dramatically reform the system is right now.
Right. And since, you know, our first interview with Quilla Pele, his blog has been censored and removed from WordPress, which is huge. KP has been doing a blog since, I think, 2012, and he had over 50 million views of his blog. And it's a shame that he's been censored. And I did a special report just about that. You know, he's a friend of the GoldFish Report. And not only that, you're absolutely right, Austin, and I have talked about this before. The GoldFish Report's original YouTube channel with millions of views, thousands of subscribers, my first 200 reports just vanished. I mean, YouTube, through their first round of censorship, deleted the channel and never restored it. WordPress also deleted 3 of our blogs, and our sister site is Canary Chronicles, so you can go there too and find more information. But they deleted those blogs, and no, you know what's interesting, Austin, is there's no recourse either. It's just run just like the same Gestapo of the court system, right? There's no recourse. And, you know, Facebook banned me from posting to groups for over 3 months, and I wasn't even using it at the time. Like, the whole day went by and just arbitrarily, it was just completely arbitrary, right? They just blocked me because the GoldFish Report gets a lot of viewers. We used to have 170,000 weekly viewers on our news page on Facebook, and you know, they have done everything they can to throttle that reach and to shadow ban us as well. But are you saying that you think it should be regulated as a utility, the internet?
Absolutely. And every day we wait to do that is a day that our freedoms are closer to never coming back. The phone company can't shut off your phone because they don't like what you're saying on the phone. Right. The electricity company can't ban you from electricity because they don't like how you're using it. the toll road company who builds the toll roads can't ban you from the road because they don't like how you drive. So the social media companies cannot ban or inhibit your access to the public square because they don't like your opinions. And people need to realize, like, this is a grave threat to all of our freedom if we allow some tech oligarchs that have monopolies on the flow of information to control what we're allowed to say and what we're allowed to think.
You know, Austin, just the fact that we're having this conversation is all the evidence that we need for the normies to illustrate that we have a very big problem. And you know, I have to tell you, I mean, I have relatives who you can't have these conversations with. You know, you just can't, because they don't see it, or they choose not to see it because they don't
want to hear it.
Right, Scott?
Because it bothers their psyche that things are so bad.
It does. And that's it. And, you know, but the honest truth is that you sit this out and you're going to have worse consequences come your way. We don't have the freedom anymore. We don't have the luxury of sitting this one out. Because, you know, Austin, isn't it really about the fight? This is really humanity's last chance. We either get it right or we lose it.
Absolutely. The next like 6 to 8 months, this is our time. This is the best opportunity we will ever have to reform our country is now in the next 6 to 8 months in the run up to the election. Because I mean, you've seen the FBI has been caught being nakedly corrupt, not just to regular people, but to the president and to General Flynn and to so many people at the highest levels of government, right? And if they can do that to them, they can do that to anyone. And the social media companies have been caught. There was those doctors that came out the other week. They're citing, you know, empirical information about coronavirus, right? They're giving stats. They're giving, you know, informed opinions, and YouTube is able to just arbitrarily ban them. There was people trying to organize protests against these lockdown measures on Facebook, and Facebook just arbitrarily bans them because, you know what, the World Health Organization says that you're not allowed to do that. So we've never had a more clear picture of what's happening here. And so everybody who's cares about this stuff, everybody who's a patriot needs to realize that this is the best opportunity we will ever get to bring down the dramatic change that we're trying to make happen in this country is right now. And that every single one of our voices matters. Even if you don't have a big YouTube channel, you don't have a big platform, even just, you have 10 followers on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, just getting yourself on the record saying that, look, I'm another person. I see this problem, and this is definitely a thing. Our voices add up, right? Maybe we're not always super powerful as individuals, but if we put our voices together and we really try to move the needle in the same direction, we all shoot in the same direction, we can really make some fantastic things happen here.
Well, I think people are finally starting to open their eyes. There's lots of people across the country who are protesting these draconian measures that are limiting our freedoms. We do have Attorney General Barr stating that he's going to file lawsuits against governors who continue to restrict the expression of constitutional rights. And again, it's kind of like they tell us we have this until you walk into a courtroom and you find you have none. So it's kind of like, they have to keep up the appearance. They have to keep telling us we have these constitutional rights. They keep giving us the appearance we have them. They keep the mass mind manipulation going until you walk into a courtroom and you find that you don't have that. So I appreciate both of you being with me. Audrey, Ewis, I appreciate you being here and simulcasting this on Ascension Radio. To all of our viewers, I want to thank you all for joining us. Audrey, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you can also, folks, come every Saturday night. There's always a new broadcast with the GoldFish Report on Ascension Radio as well. We either sometimes do archived reports or we do lives like we're doing tonight. And Scott, thank you so much for joining me again. We always have, it's really a lovely time. And I'm just wondering if you can just, send us off with a blessing like you usually do, because I can tell you, we certainly need it.
We need it. So we'll give a blessing. In the name of the Almighty, I am that I am. And by dedication of the great divine director, we give a blessing to all of you who hear my voice and even those who do not, that we telepathically communicate to you to wake up, Wake up and demand your freedom restored to you. Wake up and decree your freedom restored to you. We bless you that you will have an open mind to what is actually happening on our planet right now. That right now is our time to wake up and to restore our freedoms, restore our ability to get ready for the ascension, restore our ability to learn and to demand our rights, our privileges, our incorruptible freedoms that were bestowed upon us, that we can carry these out into the world rather than enslaving our planet. We bless you that you will be bold, that you will be open to learning about what is really going on. We bless you that you will be able to pray and meditate and dedicate your time and your mind to waking up the planet and assisting all the humans to become higher minded, more blessed, more healthy, more alive. We bless you with these blessings from the Almighty. I am that I am. So be it. So it is.
Amen. So thank you for that, Scott. And just remember, these are unalienable rights, folks, not unalienable. We're not aliens. What is all that about? Unalienable, meaning they cannot hold your property and take your property and possessions and rights without due process. That's what the word means. So everybody, you have a great night. Austin, thanks for being with us. It's been a pleasure. We hope to see you again soon on the GoldFish Report.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Louisa. And this GoldFish Report, awesome job on it. And thanks, Scott. And thanks, Audrey. And look forward to being back sometime soon. And everybody out there, I can't wait
Can't hear you.
Recognize how powerful you are as an individual, and that your voice does matter, and that we need you more than ever right now.
I bless you that you'll be free and the judge will be full of compassion and love for freedom.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, Audrey. Thanks.
Okay, everybody, and to all the viewers who are with us, all the viewers in our live chat, thank you so much for your comments. There have been so many well wishes sent to everybody, to Scott, to Audrey, and of course to Austin. Everybody's been worried about Austin and concerned about how he's doing. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks to all the viewers who are watching and to all the viewers in our live chat. And have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time. This concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.